Shalom. I'm Rabbi Nathan Davidovich, speaking to you on behalf of the webyeshiva.org from Efrat, Israel. Happy to be back after I missed you for the last couple of weeks. My wife and I were traveling on the high seas and had a wonderful time. I want to talk today in this few minutes about Parsha Korach. It was kind of difficult to decide which Parsha to talk about because here in Israel, we're reading the Parsha of Korach. Everywhere outside of Israel, they're reading the Parsha of Shalach, which we read in Israel last week. But I'm going to stick with the Parsha of Korach, which we're reading this week. Korach talks about the rebellion of Korach. The Parsha starts, Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kahas and Levi, and so on. He says, and Korach took. And what did he took? He took these followers, 250 followers, and complained to Moshe, to Moses. He said, who are you that you not only are in essence the king of the people of Israel, you are a leader, but you also have the right to appoint the high priest? You know, we are from the Levite family. We too should be appointed. I want to be high priest. Why should you appoint your brother? You have no right to do that. So this was the rebellion that they started. So when Moshe heard this, you know that Moshe Rabbeinu is the humblest of all people. And when he heard this, he actually threw himself on the ground to think, what have I done? Have I ever done anything to deserve this? And he did a kind of an accounting of his acts. Did I ever take a penny from them, steal anything, take a sheep from them? And he finally realized that there was nothing he had done. So he became very angry. And he gave them a test. And we learned from this test and the follow-up of this test, we learned a couple of important lessons as to how we should deal with anger, how we should deal with revenge, and how we should deal with discipline, and how we should look at a person's motivations. So what happened? So after Moses did this self-accounting, he then got up. He was angry, and he says, this is what you should do. Korach, you and your followers should take fire pans and put incense in them and put a fire in them, and then we'll see if God accepts your offering. And if God accepts your offering, then we'll know that you've got a valid claim. So he told them to do that the next morning. But then later on, before they actually do that, the next morning, he changes the wording somewhat. And he says, everybody should take their fire pan and put incense on it and bring an offering to God. And you'll see if God will accept your offering. So it's an interesting distinction in terms of the two ways he said it. The first time he said, put a fire on it, and then we'll see. The next time he just said, put incense on it. So what happened? The first time he was so angry and he realized that if he told them to put a fire on it, and he knew that they would be punished with that fire. He knew that if they put a fire on it, they would be consumed. And he said, look, these people have wronged me, but they're my people. I love them. I can't cause them harm. So he then changed the language to not have them not put a fire on it. So what did Korach do? Korach, in his stubbornness, went ahead and put a fire on it, and the fire, in fact, consumed them, and they had a death that was a supernatural death. The ground opened up and swallowed them. Now, there's an interesting analogy that Rabbi Levine brings as to why he changed this language. And he says, we sometimes have to, even in disciplining somebody, have to realize that even though we may have an adversarial position, we still should love them. They're our people. They're human beings. So therefore, Moshe changed the language. And this is illustrated by a story that many of our tzaddikim, our holy people, have done, trying to emulate this quality of Moshe Rabbeinu, to try to be measured in a response. They tell a story about Rabbi Yitzchak of Berditchev, the Berditchever Rebbe. Before he was a rabbi in Berditchev, he was the rabbi in Pinsk. And he wasn't, at that time, there were a lot of people who were opposed to Hasidim. So he wasn't welcomed by everybody. And so one day he went out of town for something, and his adversaries decided that they would embarrass him by taking his wife and children, putting them on a garbage wagon and sending them out of town. And the supporters heard about this, and they went to the rabbi of the town, great rabbi, and they said, please put a curse on these people for what they're doing. And his answer was, how can I curse them when Rabbi Yitzchak at this very time is standing before the Holy Ark saying, please don't let any harm come to these people who are doing this. That's the concept of Moshe. That's the concept of discipline with love. Now, after this whole event, there's another interesting thing. After the 250 people, Korach and 250 people are killed, then God tells to Moshe, he says, tell Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, tell Elazar, son of Aaron HaKohen, to lift up these fire pans. Now, these were the fire pans that were used to try to rebel against Moshe, and in essence, rebel against God. He says, lift them up because they are holy. And in fact, they lifted them up. They made them holy. So how can these things be holy? And the answer is because even though the intentions of Korach were wrong, they had a holy purpose. And they meant to use this. They meant that these should really be used for holy purposes. So sometimes when we judge somebody, we get so angry, we forget that there may be a good motive for it. We all know what they say about motives, but I think it's an important point. There's an interesting story that is told by Rabbi Tversky. He tells a story that his father used to tell about the Baal Shem Tov. We know that when the Baal Shem Tov started Hasidism, many people were against him because they thought that the spirituality that it was bringing would destroy Judaism. And one time the Baal Shem Tov visited the town of Brod, and Reb Chaim Sanzer, a great Talmudist, lived there. And the people decided that the Baal Shem Tov is going to visit here. We're not going to let him come in. We're going to drive him out of town. So even though Reb Chaim Sanzer was upset with him, he decided, no, I can't do that. I don't like what he's doing, but I can't go drive him out of town. In the meantime, somebody came to Reb Chaim and asked him to rule on a halachic question. And he gave a ruling on the question. And then later on that day, he was thinking over his ruling and decided, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. I gave the wrong ruling. And I gave the wrong ruling because I really should have chased after the Baal Shem Tov and driven him out of town. So I've got to correct my error, and I'm going to go find him where he is. And he picked up some stones, and I'm going to take these stones and throw them at him, these pebbles, and throw them at him. So he goes from inn to inn looking to see where the Baal Shem Tov is. He finally comes upon an inn. It's early in the next morning already. And he finds the Baal Shem Tov. And the Baal Shem Tov is in the middle of his prayers, the Shachri's prayers. He's davening at that moment. So he couldn't throw stones at that time. So after finishing his prayers, Baal Shem Tov turned to him and greeted him. And he said to Reb Chaim, he says, don't worry, your halachic ruling that you gave was correct. And he showed him the source of how he knew it. This was the mystical powers of Baal Shem Tov. He showed him the source as to how it was correct. And Reb Chaim was greatly relieved, and he thanked the Baal Shem Tov, but as he was leaving, he took the stones out of his pockets and dropped them on the ground. And Baal Shem Tov ran after them and picked them up. He says, "What are you doing?" He says, "You gathered these stones with a holy intent, and they should not be left on the ground." And this is the concept that the Baal Shem Tov, this is the concept we learn from Moshe Rabbeinu, from our Torah, that God is teaching us to value things that everybody say, even though it's totally against us, to recognize that they might be said with good motive, and if they're said with a good motive, give it the credit they're due. Anyway, I thank you all for listening and wish everybody a wonderful Shabbat on behalf of the webyeshiva.org. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.